7-Elevens to finance hitting that number, versus those who say, "Ah, it's nice to do. I mean, you pay me a bonus on 85%, so you're the idiots." So I think the issue is, how do we make sure that we talk about people through 20-60-20? And I put this up there before. 20% of salespeople believe they're winners. They're high performers, winners. Only 20%. Winners do things that others won't do. They are willing to do the things that others dream of doing. And by the way, they're always making quota. And the challenge is this. We keep going to these people saying, you need to do a little more because these people are going to fall short. So we keep asking them, I need 140% out of you this month. That's not right. Let's go to the other end. 20%, let's be politically correct here, of sales forces are non-winners. They're winning challenge. These are low performers by choice. They're good at making excuses, I said before. They always miss their number, but they always have a reason why they miss it. They always fail to do their behavior, but they have a reason why they can't do it. It's always the prospect's fault. It's never their fault. It's always, I didn't get the leads that Jerry got. So these people who come in short, we go to these people and say, well, you know these guys are not doing well. Come on, be a team player. This is why they leave. Number one reason why winners leave a company, they don't feel appreciated. They know they can go anywhere and make money. They know they can go anywhere and be top performers. They know they're always going to be at the top of a stack ranking because that's their nature. And so the challenge we have here is, well, let's do one more thing. 60% in the middle of a sales force, we call them, it's a technical term, at-leasters. At least they show up. Some days they have good days, some days they have bad days, but they're variable performers. When you need them most, that's when they go to sleep. When you don't expect it, that's when they have a good month. But they're tossed in the wind and they leave things to chance. But here's what we know. This is 80% of your sales force. And this is why you, as leaders, have to look at sales differently. You have to look at the hiring process differently. You have to look at whether the people in your sales force are worthy of being there. They can't be there because it's an annuity that just keeps renewing every year. Because if that's the case, and you start losing, what if you lost some of these right now? What would happen to your business? What if some of these people focused on gravity and dropped down here? You want to win the battle of sales leadership? Get half of these people to fight gravity. Get half of these people to fight gravity. Spend your time as a leader. Instead of spending 80% of your life with these people, find these people who are willing to make difficult choices in that middle group and free them from gravity. Let them rise. Caitlin.
How would you say the best way for the people that are motivated by their quota, what would be the best process to create their quota and have them be motivated by it?
Here's what I'm going to do. I want you to stop making quota based on last year. I want you to do 10% better than last year is the wrong way to set a quota. I want you to have them take a look at what do they believe based on the behavior they performed last year is the best number for them right now. So based on the behavior they performed, not on their results, based on the behavior that they performed. And then if it falls short from your number, here's what I want you to say. Take a look at that through more, better, or different. If I said to you that my number is $1 million higher than yours, and you believed you could get it, would you have to do more of what you did last year? Would you have to do it better or different? And so that's when you as a leader teach them that they can raise the ceiling. And it's something we do for a lot of companies. Companies who set quota based on last year always fail. Because there's no justification for it. We want you to do 10% more. Is based on your behavior and the number you turned in, what does this year look like? And then you as leader have to sit with them to say, let's look at the behavior. I'm going to show you the behavior in a minute. Let's look at the behavior to see what you can do better at.
Yeah, so you have a lot of salespeople that have a way higher quota than other people, and they are commissioned off of hitting it, but then at the end they have a stretch goal, which then obviously
Sure.
But it still is hard to look at somebody like, oh, you have to hit a fourth of what this person has to hit. And how do you keep them all motivated?
And that's the challenge of these people, everybody gets a
Do
number,
they
right?
have better clients, they have better upside on
It's more,
achieving
usually
that
more
goal?
experience and
Just experience
Yeah.
is gonna get them up
well, we
there.
have territories.
So is it a better territory, a better business?
Is there such a
Profile.
thing as a better territory? If you look at the salesperson, salespeople can create the word better in their territory if they choose. And
It's about building
They would have a
rapport.
better ability.
and there we go, go ahead.
They have a better sales ability to get into larger clients.
That's
so we
it.
think that they.
That's the
should
idea.
have-
Yep.
That's exactly the idea. So you judge their ability to be, you don't have more clients, but you have the ability to get through to them quicker than maybe Joe over here.
Right.
Yeah, I like that, and so that's where we're gonna go with behavior, so we'll go there shortly. The idea is simply, stop spending 80% of your time trying to get these people to the performance bar. These people, and again, I can say them because I don't know them in your company, aren't worthy of your time. They have to prove that they're worthy of your time. So for these people, help them set stretch goals. These people wanna set stretch goals, and that's how you help them grow by helping them set stretch goals for recognition. They know they can make money, these people want recognition, so help them set the goals that they'll write songs about. These people, help them set goals of traction. Traction are key to the middle 60%, so what are those little goals that if they set them in minuscule numbers will help them grow? Don't expect them to set a stretch goal, but little traction goals that force them to do a little more every time. These people, have them prove to you through their goals that they're worthy of your time. So have them set any goals, and then 30, 60, 90. In 30 days, what should they accomplish? In 60, what should they accomplish? In 90, what should they accomplish? And that's how you manage people through their goals. Manage people through their behavior, not through their results.
I have more of a question on your opinion. So if you have people in the 60%, they often falter where they maybe aren't hitting deadlines or, lacking on that business professional side. What's your belief in how do you motivate them to act more in that top 20% than the bottom when sometimes they falter? Like, I struggle, I guess, with do I write them up? Well, then they're gonna get even more demotivated. Do I just let it go and try to, but I'm their manager, I have to hold them accountable, so that balance between keeping them motivated to do the right thing when they often do the wrong thing.
I love the thought, because again, it gets asked a lot of times in classes like this. Here's my answer, and it's one of these things that I believe that people like that, who have the ability, don't have structure and process that allows them to be successful. And so what they do is they shotgun their approach, and so they'll drift off the trail. You bring them back and they're at it again, but they'll drift again. So for them, you have to build structure and process that allows them to stay between the lines. If they can stay between the lines, and then, by the way, they have to catch themselves when they drift. You can't be the catcher. They have to catch themselves when they drift. So process and methodology for that, probably upper 60%, the upper half of it, is that what they would be?
Yeah.
Yeah, so for that upper 60%, structure and process are always gonna be the key, because again, they have talent. They're just not consistently using their talent for good. So if you wanna talk about that later, Rich is a master of that, and just have a conversation with him. He's our process and structure guy on that. So, but Meg, does that help?
Yes, thanks.
All right. Anybody else a question? Because if not, I'm gonna tell you something that should keep you up nights. So just relax, settle in for a minute. Here are the 5 killer weaknesses that are inside all salespeople. And these things, if you don't know exist, will prevent people from being successful. And so, first killer weakness is someone's ego. And we equate ego to confidence. Confidence in self is ego. And we measure all of these on a 10-to-1 scale. Now, nobody comes in and says to you, I'm not confident. We test for that. But the challenge is, salespeople who have a low ego score or a very high ego score will try to bluff their way through their confidence. And you have to be careful with that, because it's one of those things that you'll teach them things, they'll tell you they're gonna do things, but their internal confidence will never allow them to do it. They'll always, when they get out of your sight, make excuses for why they can't do it. Because again, it's a hardwired thing. Now, people who have a lower ego or confidence score are typically the ones who struggle when they're out of your eyesight. They'll commit to things when they're in front of you, but once they get away from you, things don't happen, and you wonder why. Gee, they seem so positive when they're in front of me. So that's something to pay attention to. All these we test for, just so you know. Need for approval, the need to be liked. 67% of human beings have a need to be liked. Now, that need to be liked is great in your personal life, but guess what? In sales, it's not so good, because the need to be liked in sales prevents people from asking difficult questions. I don't want you to dislike me, so I'm not gonna ask you, do you have the money to pay for my product? I'm not gonna ask you, how do you make decisions like mine, because you might not like me. And so this is hardwired. Now, for you, don't try to change it, teach people to see the signs of it, and that's what we do. We teach people to see the signs of that when they're in front of somebody. And typically, prospects know this. Here's what prospects do. How much does your product cost? Salesperson will say $3,000. Prospect says $3,000, 2 decibels higher than the salesperson. $3,000, well, maybe it's 1,000. And so what happens is that wonderful pushback by prospects triggers the need for approval, and they cave in. But again, in your personal life, you should keep this, because it makes you serial killers if you're not. So the idea is simply, you should be liked in your personal life. Fear of rejection. 75% of human beings have a fear of rejection. And in sales, it translates into the inability to hear no and deal with no. I'm never going to do business with you translates to, I'll call you next week. And so the challenge of this fear of rejection is, again, they're linked for a reason, because these two things prevent salespeople from doing what they're supposed to do. A salesperson who has a methodology that is supposed to do a certain thing, these two things will prevent them from doing it. And again, we test for this. These are killers. But here's the challenge for you as leaders. You need to be able to deal with these. You need to see the signs of them, you need to recognize them, and you need to be able to not try to change people, but transition them into at least dealing with it, because people can deal with it. Emotion. Let's do this as emotional composure. Emotional composure, happy ears. Write down happy ears. It's a psychological position where, in happy ears world, we are always hearing things as good. My God, it's a great life. If I can just be happy that I'm up this morning and I'm in front of you. Happy ears is an incredible position in the sense that emotions are either high, and if they're high, people run by their emotion and can't wait to do it, or low, and if they're low, the other extreme, they're never going to get out of bed. So we call it bipolar, but it's not. I think the issue is simply inability to control your emotion. And when a prospect says, I'm going to do business with you, how many times does a salesperson, inner child, jump up and down screaming, this is great, and leave without saying, what does that really mean? Positive outlook. Positive outlook. I think positive outlook is one of the most misused terms in the world. And I think positive outlook, how many people have a positive outlook until something goes wrong? I leave the house in the morning to make a great sales call. I'm in a good mood. I back out of the driveway, and Mrs. O'Leary, who's older than dirt, runs into me before I get to the road. What happens to my positive outlook if it's fake? And so the challenge of a positive outlook is we want people to be positive about the world, but we also want them to be realistic. That some will, or I can't spell it. Some will, some won't, so what? Next. Some will buy from you, some won't buy from you, so what? Keep prospecting. And I think that's the model that we have to be able to go through. And here's a big one for you. We talked about price before. Money tolerance. How many of your salespeople have a low money tolerance? If their money tolerance is lower than the price of your product, they will always try to get you to lower the price of your product to close the deal, because it's above their tolerance level. And so if you're selling a very expensive product, you better make sure you have people with a high money tolerance, because they always can't wait to get out there and do what? Sell this at full price. Versus those with the low money tolerance are always coming to you saying, hey, if you cut this by 50%, I can close this deal. Probably not in your world though, no one's facing that. Tell me about these 5 things. We test for 33 behaviors. These are the top 5 killers. And what we find is, these are the ones that, let's go back, hold this hostage. Give me a thought. I'm looking for something I can say brilliant to as a response. Devin, what are you picking up?
The thing I'm thinking about is I wanna meet the 8% of people who fear rejection but don't need approval.
Yeah, that's me.
That's it?
I don't like to be rejected, but I deal with it because I'm money motivated. I don't like rejection. I like people to spend time saying yes around me, so I don't like it. But guess what? Here's what my cold call sounds like. This is a cold call. Do you want to hang up? And when they hang up, I call them back and say, sorry, we were disconnected. What were you saying? That's 8%. I make 5 of those a week. In the 23 years, I've closed $1 million doing that. Because what do people say when I call them back? What do you mean disconnected? I hung up on you. To which I always say, why? What did I do? And so the challenge is what? The challenge is simply, let's make sure that we're dealing with issues, as Devin said. What do you talk about? What do you think about over here? Anybody? Let me see.
Like, for me, the biggest struggle is fear of rejection. Like, if somebody says no right away, like, I want to walk away, be like, I'm so sorry, I don't want to bother you.
Bingo.
Like, I don't want to do anything because I know, like, I would be irritated if somebody would be bugging me all the time and I say no.
Sure.
So that's like a biggest struggle, like, I'm facing.
Let me give you a heads up. What you're hearing is personal rejection,
Right.
not role rejection.
Right.
You have to translate that in, they rejected my role, my activity, not my being. And when you hear it as a rejection of being, and most people do, you're not alone, you're just honest about it. When most people hear it as rejection of being, it's shattering. I want to get away from that person and move on to the next one. Great thought. Back there. You've been laughing, smiling a lot, now I call on you, you say nothing. Genius, let's go, give me some genius. I don't care who it is. I'm waiting, I'm not moving until it goes on. Thought? Emily?
For the positive outlook piece, I just think that being realistic is really key in our business too, because, I mean, you can be optimistic all day, but then when that fear of rejection comes in and they get rejected, they've got to be able to bounce back from that too
Sure.
and keep moving.
So my question is, how do you teach somebody that? So if it's innate in me, which it is, because I can get rejected all day long and I won't take it personally, but I will try to figure out why I was rejected and then how not to get rejected the next time I call. So I went out one day and I had all these calls, every single one closed the door on me. A lot of it wasn't in my control, but some of it was, so I had to look critically at it and say, okay, why did I fail? You know, and how am I not gonna fail? How do you teach that to someone?
I teach people that failure is an end result of a goal. If I say to you, failure is actually the achievement of a result different than you started out to achieve, it's different than the way you would define failure. You would define failure as negative. I don't see it as negative. I see it as getting those people out of my life who are I'm never gonna have to deal with again. So
But I have to go back,
then,
so I'm not done.
then when you go, wow, then that's, you have $7,000 with you, I'll teach you right now. So I think the idea is simply, what you have to be able to do when you go back is be Teflon. As I said to
Oh,
Lucy.
no, I looked at it the same way you looked at it, but how do you, so I know I'll go back and I know that, what you just said, but how do I teach that to someone else?
Here's what you said. We got off,
Teaching confidence.
we got started off on the wrong foot. Is there any way I can push the reset button and ask you, at a certain point, I'm gonna keep calling on you, what are some things that we could talk about that you would find value? Because obviously I've missed that, and I've talked to you about the things that I find value in.
That's how I articulate it to my staff.
Yep, yep.
Thank you.
The idea is this, no one comes to you with tattoos of this on their forehead saying, I have these things. And the average manager doesn't find out about these things until the hiring is done and until the damage is done. So for you, give yourself a note, and the note is, make sure you run a behavioral interview. And a behavioral interview will flush these out. If you want to know how to do it, ask us later, but the challenge is a behavioral interview. Here's the challenge of a behavioral question to ferret this out. I always ask, if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? Whatever answer they give me, I say that's the wrong answer. The people who have a high fear of rejection will change their answer. The people who don't will keep their answer. And so I said to somebody the other day that I'm interviewing here, well, if you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? And he said, is that a serious question? I said, yeah. He said, I'd be an elm. I said, nobody says elm, that's the wrong answer. Give me a better one. He said, oak. I said, I'm gonna save you 50 minutes in this interview, you're gone.
So what if I answered why? I would have asked you why.
Beautiful. What would that have told me?
You're gonna get more.
I wanted to know why.
Yeah,
What?
anything other than changing your answer is the right answer. It doesn't matter what it is, as long, defending your answer is the right answer. Look, Bill, it's an Elm. Elm is the #1 train in America. We're killing it off in great numbers with these. Doesn't matter.
Don't change your answer.
Don't change your answer. Look for people who change their answers. Let's take a look at sales competency. You as leaders have to be able to measure the competency of your people. The lowest level of competency is when your people act as vendors. Vendors only sell because they have the lowest price. Vendors always go in to make sales calls thinking, I can get my price down where you can buy, where anybody can buy. Now, everybody starts out that way in sales early on. Some people never get out of this. The next level up, problem solvers. Problem solvers sell because they can fix things. They're consistently going in looking for problems to fix. And sometimes they find them, sometimes they don't. But most people, when they hear a prospect telling them there's a problem, will fix it whether it's the problem or not. You heard Rich say that the problem the prospect brings you is never the real problem. Well, that's the issue here. And so what we're looking at the bottom here is the concept of fixing and low price. Is your sales force focused on fixing things and low price? If it is, it's an ineffective sales force. If we move up, we look at consultants. Consultants sell because they have expertise. Expertise. Now, expertise is a wonderful thing as long as it doesn't come in the form of unpaid consulting. Unpaid consulting is simply a salesperson who can't wait to go in and make a presentation to anybody who can fog a mirror. So our issue is expertise has to be earned. And you let them earn it by using the system that Rich had up there before in setting mutual agendas and asking questions. And the methodology that we teach is a Socratic method, and that it's based in selling through asking, not telling, which is very important. Partner. Those people who sell as a partner sell because they're willing to focus on the relationship. They're willing to focus on the relationship. They believe, and rightly so, that the relationship drives the sale. How many of your salespeople are out there making presentations to, let's do bronze, silver, or gold? The lowest form of relationship is a bronze level relationship. This is where they just know your name. Silver, they know something about you, they have some degree of faith in you, price is less important to them. Gold is the ultimate level of trust, and in that ultimate level of trust, they're willing to listen to your ideas, they're willing to share information openly. Over here, if you're a partner, you focus on gold plus silver relationships, and you realize that anybody you have a bronze level relationship is never going to buy from you until you strengthen that relationship. Advisor. Advisors sell based on trust. Advisors sell based on trust. Trust is not a commodity. Trust is something earned. Trust is something observed. You can't go in as a salesperson and say, trust me, I'm a salesperson. But through the observation, through the way interaction, they will begin to trust you. In our world, every salesforce we work with starts here. But eventually, they become a blend of partner, consultant, and advisor. You have to ask yourself, when you go through your Salesforce, when you leave here, I would put each one of them in a category. You're starting to think that way right now. You can't help but look at this without seeing your salespeople certain ways. The first thing I would do is I would benchmark my Salesforce as to how they sell and ask yourself, if I were to get them into this area, how would I move them up here if they're held hostage down here? It's culture. Again, back to culture. Culture comes through, well, they're great salespeople, but they always sell on price and fixing. That's not the culture you want defined. You want their people are knowledgeable, they trust the relationship, they build a relationship, and they're trusted. Tell me a little bit about what you think when you see this, because this is a critical area of leadership, is making sure that your salespeople are focused here, not here. I'm going to give you 3 minutes at table. I'm going to ask you to talk at table and give me 2 pieces of genius from each table, okay? Do it quickly. Go.
So For this, I can tell about our experience. We were never, nobody in my organization feel like we're lenders. And most, like, sure, middle categories. And for those who are trying to move the mark, but there is another problem. On the other side of the medal, some people sometimes too soon think that they can be licensed. And that is because they didn't earn the trust yet and start pushing for being an vendor. So that is having a negative impact.
Without being creative and thinking about.
Probably very nice, at least in my business, we're being engaged as a consultant, earning this through the engagement is the key. But if you come over and say, I'm your advisor, you have to come advice.
I don't know if you have to say, but I think you can access one. I mean, when I see sometimes you have sales managers that I think for some accounts, maybe I'm the advisor, and they have a full trust, the account has a full trust, with them, and they will give them anything and every information with it. But, and I think it gives them more confidence that, and they become vendors in other, and with the rest of the accounts, and that's really important, because yes, you may have those great 2 or 3 accounts, you're like this, they trust you, you'll get all their business, whatever, but then how about the rest,
It was because
it's still easy.
Maybe they didn't have a process, maybe they just got a personal click or something,
Yeah.
become advisors.
Oh, I believe there's no person, I think the
But there
process
was
is
no consistent process
Yeah.
of becoming an advisor. Otherwise,
Sure.
they would be very much.
Yeah, I think it's just lack of knowledge on how to become an expert, like you have like some green, some moving people, and they want to be experts, but they're not, they'll provide it because they don't know the business. They don't want to market as well. So it's like, my dad would be like, how do
Now, and then
I
it really
teach them
quickly,
to be subject matter experts?
making sure your sales you don't have the, I always said it, the price, value in their mind, that selling, I don't know how their business works, but for us, that selling a room for $300 is okay, it's not, you may not buy that, but it's okay, and you feel confident about this. For me, it's absolutely true. It's state of mind, it's not your money. Bob said to me, one of the ones told her, it's not your money that you're asking me to pay for it or something, somebody else is saying, and understanding that it's okay to ask for this and feel confident, and they don't. For me,
I interviewed a CEO the other day,
value, and it's so
and we were talking about
and our business
sales
accounts
force.
like this because
And one of the issues that I asked him, I drew this in front of him, and I asked him, tell me where your sales force is. He said, well, we have a very professional sales force. I would put them here and here. And so it was a printing company. And spent time with him, talked, said, he said, well, how would I know? How would you know? And I said, well, invest in a little bit of a behavioral assessment, we can tell you. His people were not only not here, they were here. They would cut each other's throats for a nickel, let alone be trusted advisors. This is the #1 area where managers get fooled, because people act one way in front of you and a different way when they're out there. And so just make sure that it's not, I think this, make sure it's I know this. What did you talk about over here when you looked at this slide?
Well, basically, I kind of started at the bottom, became a problem solver. I operate in consultant, partner, advisor, but I employ all of them when it's necessary.
Good. I want you not to employ this one. And what I want you to do is use pain so that you never have to deal with price again. That's one. Second, I want to make sure when you're in consultant role, you're not giving away information for nothing to prove your credibility. So those are the 2 keys to that. Back there, what'd you talk about?
We talked about putting together a process to actually teach people how to become advisors,
Perfect.
because what we find now is we'll have people that are advisors to certain accounts and then they're not, or we'll have people that have the natural ability to become advisors, and then we just sit there and stare at the other people like, well, they're not, I guess. So they're gonna always be a vendor and.
Build the success profile I talked to our friend here about a minute ago, Pierre, about. That success profile shows them that the qualities you want, the behavior you want are here. If not, they'll defend this until their death, even though they realize that it's wrong. Here.
I think one of the things that he said was relationships. I mean, like teaching, I'm looking at more of like staff leadership role than the client right now, but like when I'm trying to teach like one of my young, very young salespeople who's good, but sometimes you can be more like an order taker instead of establishing a relationship. And she asked me one day, because I'm very a seasoned salesperson, and I said, you know, I want you to be meeting the clients when you're here on site, make sure they're having a good time. She's like, well, what's the purpose of that? I'm like, I wanted to walk out of the room. I was like, the purpose is, I mean, do you know how many repeat clients I have? Because of the relationship I build with them. And teaching someone that, it was kind of like her aha moment. Oh.
You just hit something huge, Michelle, and that is most people define building a relationship on their terms. We did a massive test here one time where my office, if you look at it right now, it's like a library. There are 1,000 books in there. It's set up very professional. But we took everything out of my office except the glass top desk with a chair that I sat behind. In this corner, a mannequin with a dress on it. In that corner, a huge plumber's wrench. And on this wall, I bought it at a garage sale, a surfboard that was signed by Duke Kahanameya, one of the greatest surfers ever. That's all that was in my office. And so salespeople would call on me, and when they would come in, there'd be a chair for them to sit down. How do you think they tried to bond and build a relationship with me? First, by observing what was around the room. And so they would look at the things around the room and relate to me as if I were a cross-dressing plumber who liked to surf. And so I think the challenge that we have is most people fool themselves into thinking that they're building relationships when they're just commenting on what's in the room. So that goes back to your point of she didn't understand, but the challenge is many people who do understand will still do what the salespeople who called on me did.
Yeah, because she asked questions. I
Right.
mean, that's good that she's figuring out why she's doing something.
Yeah.
Because her brain's.
Isn't that a big step though? That's the first step in learning, is why. It's, if they don't ask why, you can't help them.
And my initial reaction was like, oh my God, why don't you know this? Like, I've known it for, I mean,
Well, because
I'm-
she's young and inexperienced. You have the
exactly, and
experience.
I have to teach, and I got past that, and I have to teach her why it's important.
That's your learning point as a manager.
Yeah.
Your learning point, part of your job as a manager is training, and I'm gonna show you how that fits into where we're going.
But then you've got the ones, like I have one particular that I can think of, that challenges me every time I'm trying to develop. You know, she's like, I've never heard that, not the why, I've never heard that before. What are you talking about? Why are you saying it that way? I have 20 years on her experience, sales, been low of the totem pole up to the high of the totem pole, you know what I mean? And she's challenging me every step of the way.
I
Combative,
wish that were
very
challenging,
combative.
but it's not as judging. The
Okay.
questions done that way is more judging, and the people who judge are looking to defend what they're doing because they don't want to understand what you're doing. Challenging is why. I'll go back to where you took me a minute ago. I love challenging, but judging is different.
Okay.
So I
But
think
it's
that's,
very negative.
yeah, exactly. That's
okay.
what I judge that to be wrong. And that's why I'm not going to say that to you, but I'm going to ask it with a tonality that makes you understand that. And so that's called judging in the leadership world. Challenging, I love people that challenge me every day of the week. You should be challenging in here. I
Yeah.
think the issue is, let's make sure that that's what we're encouraging, and we're eliminating the judging type behavior.
Well, the problem is when you're judging, it's like you're judging somebody who's got a proven track record too. It's
Right.
like, why
Why
are you judging me? I
Yeah.
obviously am doing something
And
right.
I can fire you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
You heard Rich talk to you about a selling system a minute ago, and a selling system is only good if you have people to sell to, right? So let's look at you as leaders and the predictability of your sales force. So I want you to think, your leadership hat is on now, you're looking at your sales force, and again, we talked about how is quota becoming predictable for you? Well, this is called a suspect funnel. And the suspect funnel is the key to predictable volume. You as leaders should look at this and say, if I had a good suspect funnel, I would sleep well at night. So first thing that happens is we need to be able to start putting suspects into this funnel. By the way, everybody doesn't start in your life as a prospect. They have to earn the right to be a prospect. Just remember that. Everybody is not a prospect. So how do we go out there and find suspects? Well, first we cold call. Cold calling is a key element of today's world. and it's coming back. But by the way, it's only 1% effective. So the challenge is your people should be using the phone to drive business. I'll come back to what Pierre said about online social stuff coming in is great, but 60% of your leads have to be driven by face-to-face encounters. 60%, and supplemented by the stuff that comes in. Mail, electronic mail or social media. Social media is going to be part of mail because there is that element of writing. And so the challenge is, it's about 3% in finding your target audience, but it will find your target audience. You can make it focused if your messaging is right. Networking. Networking is key because, again, it allows you to go face to face. It's 50% effective in finding your target audience, so your people should be good at networking. Referrals. Referrals close at about a 75% rate with your target audience because it's warm. And so, do your people focus on getting referrals? And lastly, business introductions. Business introduction. Close at a 90% rate. So here's the challenge. We call this out in that this behavior has to be plugged into a calendar so you know your people are prospecting consistently. My cookbook, 25 cold calls a week, 5 pieces of mail, a month, 3 networking events where I meet people who will take my phone call within 3 days. Referrals, I give 1 referral on a Friday. Next week I always get 1 back from somebody. Business introductions, every 2 weeks I have a lunch with a client, ask them to bring a friend who may be in need of my services, and so it's a testimonial close. All these things are designed to be active prospecting. Passive prospecting is everything else. So, do you spend your time in passive prospecting or active prospecting? It's a huge thought. 80% of your life should be spent active prospecting.
What's an example of passive prospecting?
Trade show, people who go to trade shows. Of going to a chamber luncheon and sitting next to people and having a conversation. Well, it's the luck of the draw who you sit next to, so there's no guarantee. So those are a couple good examples of them. Writing articles. I write articles every week and put them up on LinkedIn and the like. Sometimes I get hit, sometimes I don't.
Are you familiar with the term Lean, Six Sigma, Lean? This would be considered like standard work.
Yes, exactly.
This would be your standard work
Yep.
as part of your Lean process.
It's exactly it.
Consistent, right, system.
Yeah, it's also benchmark in our world, same idea.
So, why do we need to spend time and effort, like, in cold calling and mail when we have very low percentage?
Well, because, again, this is how you test your need for approval, fear of rejection, and strengthen your spine and things like this. And so, for me, the largest piece of business that I ever closed from a cold call made $500,000 for this company. Based on that, I'm going to keep making cold calls because you never know where I'm going to find that acorn again. By the way, it's masochistic, but it's fun for me too. So I think the challenge that we have is you should be doing things like that. Now, I wouldn't be making 700 cold calls a day, but I would pick a number that you're good at. I would target my cold calls to a list that's productive, and I would focus on getting better at whatever that number is. And so for me, in these 25 cold calls a day, my goal is to have 7 unique conversations. Not pieces of business, 7 unique conversations. Yesterday when I made them, I had 3, so I felt a little light. So today when I make them, I'm looking to make up for that. Unique conversations are what are the key. So for all of these, I think the challenge is a blended approach in today's world because you never know where your prospects are going to get their information from is the key. And I would also put writing articles on LinkedIn and things like that, but just some of the big ones.
So
now, why is this important? Because it has to fill the suspect funnel. So here's the challenge of predictability. At the beginning of every month, I start out with 25 suspects in my funnel. 25 suspects. That's what this is designed to drive for me. And here's what I know. From a suspect to become a possible, I have to be able to build a relationship and set a good upfront contract. But I lose 7 people who aren't able to build a relationship with you, or don't choose to, or don't want to talk to me. So 7 go away. For me to go from possible to prospect, I have to find pain. I lose another 6. So now I'm down to 12 as the month unfolds. For me to go to prospect or probable, that's money and decision, I lose another 4. And so this from here to here is fulfillment. I wind up getting 6 new customers by starting out with 25. This is predictability. You as leaders have to find a way to create a predictable model. Now, these numbers won't be your numbers. It will take you 90 days to come up with your numbers of what makes sense, because you have to calibrate the scope as usual. But this is where predictability lies. All of this fuels that. Thoughts? Whether you use this or not, if you don't have a system that's predictable, which is where I started, you cannot forecast business. It's physically impossible. What we find by doing this here, we never have a bad month. Now, never having a bad month is something many companies can't say. So for your challenges, make sure that you're focused as leaders on making sure you're not just using your CRM or using any of the methodologies you have that aren't guaranteeing the results that you need. Questions?
So, I guess what I struggle with this, and predictability is definitely a challenge, absolutely of mine and of our business, is for our business, we have such a mix of cast the widest net possible and get as many suspects as you can, mixed with the relationship piece, because we might be able to get an instant sale off one cold call or one mail, or as everything we've been talking about, going through the entire methodology, that then becomes a little bit more predictable.
Yeah.
But there's just, what I struggle with the forecasting piece of it and the predictability is from like a time allocation, and then also the number of suspects and starting at.
All right, let's do one thing on top of this. How many unique conversations does it take to come up with the right number of suspects? So there is something above here called unique conversations.
Mm-hmm.
You may take it took some of the other companies like yours that I work with 500 conversations in a week to come up with their number.
Mm-hmm.
But those were all feeding this. So you need to know, for any of your salespeople, how many unique conversations, how many conversations should they be having over the course of a week? And you know, when we were, I'll give you Groupon as an example. When we were there, we would calibrate X amount of talk time. And so talk time would yield X amount of unique conversations. So for you, the challenge is, do you know, taking these numbers out of play,
Right.
how many unique conversations your people should be having?
8 to 10 a day.
8 to 10 a day. So let's use the
We
bottom.
shoot for 40 a week.
Yeah, so let's take 40 a week. And so 40 a week, unique. What should
And
that
that's
be?
new, right? Like
Yeah.
not a.
No, this is all new.
Yeah.
So how many suspects should come out of those 40 unique conversations? You don't have to tell me now, but that's what you should be thinking about, because that will determine this number.
And maybe I just missed it, but so then how do you define going from a unique conversation to a suspect?
Someone who is willing to invest 5 minutes with you on the phone that you're going to put in pain, that you're going to use pain indicator questions. See, I'm skipping a step because we didn't teach it today,
Sure.
but there's a step in there, and you and I know each other. I'll meet you sometime and show it to you. But the issue is, there's a unique step in there that says in a 5-minute conversations, I can determine there are pain indicators here that qualify this person to be a suspect.
Got it.
So if your people don't have a format to come up with those unique, with those qualifiers, that's when it doesn't make any sense to you.
Got it, okay.
Make a note for me later, for you and me, and we'll talk about it.
Sure, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else with a thought? And I'm not blowing you off for it, Lauren, it's a piece we
appreciate it.
didn't do.
That helps.
Bill, just to drive this home further, my numbers are 18 and 6. So it's gonna be a combination of all those behaviors on the left side. I have to have 18 unique conversations over the course of a week, which will drive 6 meetings for me. So in other words, 18 decision makers who have the ability to make a decision. I give them essentially my 30-second commercial. 6 of those 18 will say, we should meet. The other 12 will be like, I don't need anything, I'm good, right? So how many times do I need to put myself in position to fail? To get 6 of them to say, let's set a meeting, 6 times 4 is 24, that's my suspect funnel for the month, right? 24, 25 people is what we're looking to meet with at the top.
There are a lot of ways to filter it, and that's a classic one, because he holds himself to that every month. And by the way, when we meet, that's his conversation with me.
Got it. So that's on top of, that's pre all of
That's
this.
the stuff that's
Okay.
up here that we didn't cover, so.
Got it, that makes sense.
We could do this over a month if you want to hang out. Here's supervision, here's leadership. And this is sales leadership in general. I want you to think, leaders wear many hats. The central focus of a leader is supervision. And supervision is not micromanaging. It's assigning quotas, interpreting data, evaluating performance, it's things like that. And so supervision is a key element of any leadership. Most people spend far too much time in supervision mode, and when you spend far too much time in supervision mode, you create something called learned helplessness, where your people are always waiting for you to tell them what to do. About 45% of a leader's time should be spent in supervision. That's it. And so what that means is you're creating the guidelines for success. You're not spending your time telling people what to do. Now, this is based on authority that is position-based. Because your title says manager, you have a position of supervision. These three down here are relationship-based authority, where this is based on your position. These are based on your relationship with your people. So 35% of a leader's life is spent in coaching. And coaching is supporting, motivating, facilitating growth, helping them appreciate the skills they have and making sure that they deliver on the skills that they have. That's coaching. Now, when we look at younger organizations, we find that this is really a key to helping people grow. And coaching is something that most people are used to. Many times in a different organization, people may reject this, but now you have 80% of a leader's life is spent between supervision and coaching. 10% of a leader's life, and we teach this in our leadership program, is training. You spend your time, this is now expanding awareness, impacting knowledge, developing skills. So your people have to learn new stuff. The problem, though, is most people think they're in coaching mode when they're actually in training mode. So someone comes to you to solve a problem, you fix it. Fix it is training, empowering them to do better is coaching. And so there's a clear delineation here between these two. You know, what we find is far too many people are in fix-it mode because they don't have time. Far too many managers, hey, I don't have time to do this, why don't you do it this way? And then 10% of a leader's life is mentoring. Mentoring is creating the success profile that I mentioned to you, Pierre. It's about setting up accepted norms, demonstrating successful actions. You know, when we look at the two definable things for culture right now, coaching and mentoring. Culture is defined by how much time you spend helping your people grow. Now, this is a key piece. So what I would ask you to do for yourself is this. How much time, if this pie were 100%, do you spend, draw the pie, and just create slices of pie that tell me how much time you spend in each of these areas. Do it for yourself. So just draw a circle, create a pie chart. How much time do you spend? I'm telling you what it should be. Tell me how much time you spend and just be honest, there'll be no judgment there. Because this is your growth model.
Is this data based on any hard data?
Yeah,
Because I've seen other.
we've trained over 1.5 million salespeople, and the leaders from this, the study comes from that study.
Would you say if somebody's, you're telling them to, hey, complete this task, and they give you the task, but they don't really add in their own opinion, they kind of just are doing the bare minimum, and you're telling them, hey, do this as well, or fixing it or something, where would you say that is?
Oops.
It's just supervisor?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're doing what you say.
Yeah.
And so you're telling them, and now they won't do anything else, so you tell them that, okay, now do this, okay, then I do this. You're supervising all their activity.
Instead of mentoring them.
Instead of saying, well, if I weren't here, what would you want to get into coaching mode? The best coaching question, if I weren't here and you couldn't ask me, what would you be doing?
Right.
And so that puts the ball back in their court versus, okay, now put your left foot here, put your right foot there.
I think it,
No, do it.
I was gonna say, I think it's hard, like Marla and I both work for Pinstripes, and we're both very busy locations, and we both have high sales goals ourselves, and we're directors of sales at our locations. So how,
And we're dealing with the other ladies, motivating them.
well, that's what I'm trying to get at, it's
Yeah.
like, my boss, my other boss said, I need to relate, like, my sales were the highest in the company last year. How am I gonna relinquish my sales and trust these people to usurp my sales and motivate them, train them, coach them, but I still had a high sales goal?
Yeah, fire them all, start all over again, hire people who are willing to do what you just said, because if not, what you're doing is,
It's so hard.
you're back here. So make sure that you haven't created learned helplessness because you need to sell as much as you do. And that's why managers don't work with their people, because they have quotas, they don't have the time. By the way, I'm responsible for this, so figure it out on your own. But the challenge is, that's management. Leadership is, I can do both if I get my people to step up. So your challenge is,
It's having the right people.
starts with that. That's why I was
Right.
half kidding when I said fire them all, start all over again.
Right.
I think we make bad hires and we invest time trying to make people get to a bar they're never gonna get to.
100%.
So they suck 80% of our life out.
So you talk about firing a salesperson. So after hiring a salesperson, how long we need to wait, like,
Well,
to produce the
in my
result?
world, 90 days.
90 days?
No more than 90 days, because by the way, you know at the 20-day mark you've got the wrong person, so just for your own ego, you'll go another 70 days. But I think the challenge we have is, how many salespeople, when they accept a job, their resume's still on the street, they only accept it because it was the only job offered them, and when something better comes along, they leave. At the 45-day mark, they're gone. No more than 90 days. Drive a stake in the ground, that's it. And by the way, here's your responsibility. Build a 30, 60, 90 onboarding program that smokes that out. If you don't have a 30, 60, 90-day onboarding program, you can't fire anybody because you're the problem. So that's the issue with getting people up to speed. And if you haven't done this, start it now with 30, 60, 90 to get people up to speed now. You can always start it. But most companies don't take the responsibility for getting their people up to speed. They say, I hired you, you know what to do, go do it. The first 30 days of any employee's life is learning. Give them time to learn. The next 30 days is executing. Let them execute the behavior they have to. The next 30 days is called performing. Let them deliver numbers associated with what they executed. 30, 60, 90. But at the 91st day, if your antenna is up and saying it's wrong, done. Back to the circle. Put your pie chart in there if you would. Draw your pie chart, how much time you spend in each of those areas. You want to know why you're exhausted at night?
Sure.
If your pie chart doesn't look like this, that's why you're exhausted at night. You're not teaching people to grow in their business. You're not helping them create strategic alliances with other partners at their level, peer group pressure to grow. You're not coaching them how to better use what the skills they have, but you're spending your time telling them what to do, which sucks 80% of a manager's life. This, if you allow, will suck 80% of the time out of your life because you're constantly being tugged at. What about this? What about this? What about this? And by the way, far too many managers see their life as problem solving. I wouldn't have a job if I couldn't solve problems. That's nonsense. You have a job for all of these things. So in your pie chart that you just drew, quick discussion at table, no more than 10 minutes. What do you see in that pie chart that says you should be changing some things to be a more effective leader? And this is the basis of our leadership program. We have a monthly leadership program, third Friday of the month. This is the basis of this for 12 3-hour sessions. So spend 3 minutes. Rock on, my brothers and sisters.
Where people are, or this is where they,
Here's the situation, here's the situation.
This 45 is where they
30% of my
calibrate
time I
the
spend
starting
as
point.
supervisor.
Now, you may say, a younger
And
salesperson,
10%
spend more time in supervision.
And
more time in
10%
coaching.
so their goal is always.
And 50% of the time, I still
Yeah,
complete
your goal is
this
still,
job.
you gotta still spend some
And that's
time.
where like the
assigning
problem
those
comes
trips.
in.
Yeah, that's gonna be important.
Especially if you wanna grow your company, which is I
Yeah,
think what we're
That's
doing.
correct.
I started
So
to
instead
do
of
that.
building the team, like I stepped
I'm
into
realizing I
it
think
when
I
as a
have
salesperson, like, that's where the
in my
problem
team I have
is.
12
Training,
people,
teaching
but
so easy.
5 of them.
You said about 50%?
have
50%, yeah.
Is selling.
We're not even like half.
50% like,
Probably
on all these
like
things, and the remaining 50% ideally is like, the leadership role.
And then the majority of their
Yeah, that's a challenge.
Yeah, but
And I think
learning.
the time, then for you, it's gonna be deciding, how long are you willing willing to take, because there's gonna be an adjustment phase, you know, if you're the one selling in your company, at least that's what I'm understanding. You're gonna have to build other people to sell for you, so is there a time frame that you can afford to completely step away and really spend the time? I always tell my managers in the hotel, I said, you have to take the time to step back. It's so easy in our business, and at least I would imagine in business to just get, you know, you get hired, you get sucked into the position and everything. And as managers or as leaders, if you're head of a department or head of a company or whatever.
Another minute, that's it, do it
You have to
quickly.
step back to organize yourself, otherwise you're gonna be 50% or 60% selling, and you're sucked into this thing. So you're gonna have to figure out now that you're at that point, how do I step back, and how much time do I give myself to step back to make sure that there may be a slump a little bit, because you know, if you're not selling and nobody else is doing it, but how much time are you giving yourself to rebuild this thing that's gonna sell
So
for
that
you?
comes like, you know, the point we discussed previously, the fear of failure, like, you know,
Absolutely.
fear of rejection.
And
Right,
actually,
you
you may
have to
have a
take
little
the
bit of
hit probably
failure.
to
You may
build
have a
a
little
team
bit of
at some point.
failure for a little time, for a big gain later. At least that's the way I look at things.
Yeah,
I guess.
right.
And same thing with managers, when I say, oh, you know, I finally hired someone, I've been looking, okay, you've been without someone for 2 months, you know, a week more, 2 weeks more is not gonna make or break you.
All right, let's do this, light bulb moments. What light bulb moments did you have when you look at your pie chart?
It's hard to fix. But I mean, at least you realize that you have to.
Yeah.
It's like ordering a beer in a pub, until I have your attention. Light bulb moments. Tell me what jumps out when you look at pie charts at the table.
I was saying it made me realize that I probably have 2 groups where half my team has been here under a year, and the other 6 who have been here longer probably fall more in line with what you had up there, but that newer group is probably 50%, you know, coaching and training, 50% supervising, maybe like 2% then.
In there, you calibrate in the early stages, but as you go forward, you look at what the model is that works for everybody. You have to tailor this, I just said the same thing to this table, to the needs of your people right now, especially when they're new. Somebody else, what jumps out?
That was the big thing for us, was the life cycle of the company, the project, the employee will play a role in where you're at. It's like, you know, you learn how to ride a bike and training wheels, but eventually they start holding you back. You can't go as fast as you
Every
need to
bit.
these days.
We don't sit and yell at our children, ride, stupid, ride. I mean, it's not that, it's more, we put the wheels on, we get them to move forward slowly, they fall off, we get them back on. Great example. Anybody else? What jumps out? You're working too hard is what jumps out. Unless you balance your process of leadership, you're working too hard. You're spending more time problem solving than you should, and not enough time developing your people. Developing your people is your #1 charge. If you see your #1 charge as hitting a number, you're a manager. If you see developing your people as your #1 charge, you're a leader. So just be careful, you're not focused at the wrong end of the puzzle. Benchmarks. Companies run on benchmarks. So I want you to think of the benchmarks that you created. And the benchmarks that you created that you measure success. And behavior is a benchmark. You know, we look at metrics and numerics as benchmarks. Those are levels. Benchmarks are different. So, you know, when we look at the success equation for any company, it's the right people. Are you hiring the right people? If you're not hiring the right people, the issue is you can't grow because you're a hostage to bad hires. Next, do your people have the top 10 behaviors in their back pocket that they're carrying around? Everybody from the person who answers the phone to the person who locks up at night. The new strategy for company development now is behavioral assessments. Assessing the behavior of people. And so everybody in your company has to have 10 behaviors they're associated with. That they can say, if I do these things well, the success profile that I said to you, if I do these things well, I'm a high performer. And then the top 5 key performance indicators that indicate that this behavior is not just done in busy work, that it's done in high performance. So your questions for yourself, do I have the right people? Do they know what they should be doing? Can I measure the effectiveness of what they do? And that's going to be the message for you to take back. The message to take back is maybe the answer is no, that one or all of those isn't right. And if that's the case, you're gonna struggle with anything that I've taught you today, and Rich has taught you today. So let's look at the top 10 behaviors. These are the top 10 behaviors that all salespeople, so you're looking at your salespeople now, that all salespeople have to be good at. And what I would ask you to do is take a scale, 10 high and 1 low, and go through each one of your people and give them a rating. So lead generation, this is prospecting. Do they spend enough time prospecting? When you look at their calendar, how much of their time is committed to finding new sources of business? That's prospecting, new sources of business. Building relationships. Are they developing gold level relationships or bronze level relationships? Make sure that you have a way to filter and judge the strength of the relationships that they're building. Qualifying opportunity. You heard Rich talk to you about qualifying. In our world, that's paying money and decision. But do you have a process to qualify, or better put, disqualify those people who are never going to do business with you that your people are chasing? Making presentations. Your presentations, for the most part, probably could close at a much higher rate. And so for me, are your presentations closing above 80%? Because if the answer is no, you're leaving money on the table. You're spending a lot of time dumping information and getting the beads out at night. Servicing customers. Servicing customers is really a huge issue in the sense that, we need to make sure we have an ongoing flow of business, and that comes from 2 areas: new business and business who doesn't leave us. Any one of your customers now is a prospect for your competitor. And if you realize that, you have to have a way to service them in a way that makes them want to stay. Many salespeople aren't good at that. They choose not to be. They're blowing and going, closing new business, and what's happening is, as they close 10 new pieces, they lose 4 of their customers because somebody else came in and took them. Account management. Do your people have a way to grow your accounts? Because if they're not growing them and they're stagnating, eventually they go away. Territory development. If you drew a circle around the geography, do your people understand how to grow their entire territory? Are they cherry picking? And territory development means finding a way to go after elephants, deer, and rabbits. Not just rabbits. How many of your people are great rabbit hunters, but don't know how to hunt an elephant if they had to? And so the challenge of elephant, deer, and rabbits is it takes a mix to grow a territory. Building a cookbook, and a cookbook goes back to this page. And the cookbook allows you to see the behavior that they're doing plugged into their calendars. All I have to do is look at a calendar and I can tell whether somebody's going to be successful or not by what's plugged into it. Do your people plug their behavior into some type of calendar that you can see when they're executing it? We call it time blocks. My day is run by time blocks. All my behavior goes into a calendar under a time block, and you can see how I'm executing it. Continuous education. Do you find a way to help your people develop professionally? You're here to develop yourself professionally, but are you providing the same type of environment for your people, or are they stagnating? And by the way, there's so many sources of online development now that people can learn a million different ways, but many choose not to. Many choose to live off of dated information. And by the way, your prospects aren't living off dated information. Their power base hasn't changed. And lastly for us, execution of a system, a selling system. If your people don't have a system, there's no way to teach them how to grow, and there's no way for a leader to do the one thing you should be doing, briefing and debriefing their encounters. You have to have a formal way to brief and debrief their successes as well as their failures. These top 10 are really the key to a well-oiled machine. And for me, if I look at these behaviors and any of them fall below the 7 to 10 rating, those are the ones I focus on first. Let's get everybody up to that 7 bar first. Don't work with the ones that are in that 10 trying to get to an 11. So the issue is when you leave here, take a piece of paper up, write down the names of your salespeople, measure these. And by the way, we customize these for companies. These are fairly generic in one sense, and so if these don't fit your company, find another one that accomplishes the same thing and delineates the same information. Anybody have top 10 behaviors that you're working on right now? Because most have 3. this is your first challenge, and it better go on the end of the back page on your hot sheet, that you're gonna commit to doing something to this. Any questions or thoughts?
Is that even possible to find a person who would be brought to the level 7 with all this
Yeah, but stay away from them.
I mean,
You know what it is, Dimitri? They're out there. We just don't know questions to ask to ferret them out. They might not come from your industry, and that's one of the problems that people make. We keep hiring within our industry, so we're hiring baggage from somebody else. We're not hiring people who bring fresh ideas from other industries. So, do they exist? Yeah, 20% of the world does this. And many times we're stuck in the 80% factor who doesn't do this. And here's the other end of it. We don't see this because we don't look for this. Are you interviewing for this? Is this part of your interview process to ask people how they do these things? Because if not, you're not looking for it, you're not gonna find it. Anybody else? How do we measure these? Key performance indicators measure these. And these are the key performance indicators for my company. Number of suspects in the pipeline. I know what my company has to have, what my people have to have in the pipeline at any given time. You heard Rich say what his was and how he gets there. In my world, first face-to-face appointments. Here's what I know. Any one of my salespeople who has 6 to 8 first face-to-face appointments a week will be successful. I'm talking about second, thirds, and fourths, but 6 new opportunities to meet with someone face-to-face. Bless you, that they've used this system to work. Number of qualified proposals on the streets. Now, that doesn't mean paper that you just slung at people that there's no commitment to, but this means you've worked a process to get to that point. Consistent flow of sales dollars. How many of your salespeople wait till the end of the month and then hysterical activity on the way to the grave is what kicks in? And so consistent flow of sales dollars means money is coming in all along. That shows you that they're doing the behavior. Versus those who say, don't worry, that there's 1 week left in the month yet, I can pull this out.
Let animus specials.
Yeah, exactly. And so, by the way, I need 50% deal, I can pull it out for that for sure, so just cut your profit in half. They put it on your shoulders. And lastly, close the sale or close the file meetings. This is one you might not have heard of. Every Friday, Rich and I call anybody that we have a proposal in the hand to say, it's time to either close the deal or end it. Any prospect who's jerked us around, it's time to either move the ball forward or I'll take you out of my database. This clears out the dead wood, because most salespeople have in their contact management system nothing but dead wood. They keep poking at the corpse, hoping that it comes back to life someday. So the challenge of this is make your people weed out those individuals who are never going to do business with you, systematically, not because they like or don't like. And if they weed them out, what happens? It's like shoveling sand, fills in with something else. Don't allow people to say, hey, I got a stack of proposals out there someday this tall, and if they ever close, step back. So just be careful. These two things, these have to drive this. Now, you know what my numbers are. 25 here. This is 3 proposals on that could close every week. Consistent flow of sales dollars is weekly, you know that. And every week, 4 close the sale or close the file meetings. And so that keeps it fresh. Make them your numbers, but this is the way we do it. Questions about this or about the link of these two? Without these, this could be busy work. People could do these things, and if there's no way to measure it, it's busy work. So that's why these things are important to link it to, because these say that these are effective.
At what point does doing all of this take over the actual sales activity?
This is the sales activity. I think
Well,
that's a
the
bridge.
amount of time that you're focused, or your people are focused on doing this versus actually going out with, meeting with clients and doing your.
But this
is
is the
because
indicator
it's
that-
first face-to-face.
That's exactly what this is. These are first face-to-face appointments. This is number of suspects in prospecting. All of this is that, and I may have not explained it that way, but this is the sales activity.
Okay, no, I think I'm asking a different question.
All right, ask again.
Well, I'll
I think,
think about it.
are you saying like
consumed by actually the metrics instead of the actual activity.
Yes.
This takes exactly 5 minutes a week. Rich does this in 5 minutes a week. He just comes to me and says, this is, I don't ask for any reports on this. So for you, if you're asking your people to spend time developing reports, that's where the problem comes from. This should be something that they look at their calendar.
I'm not asking, I'm wondering if this will then take over that and become more of the activity than the work.
For this group, yes.
Okay.
For this group, probably. For this group, never.
It almost makes it seem like, to me, that this will be just naturally, they begin doing them because they're, that's.
It's rhythmic.
you don't- Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's rhythmic. It becomes part of what they do, and it's, in most worlds, people don't measure any of that, they just look at the numbers. Look, you're about 20% short in your number, go out there and work harder. This has nothing to do with that. This says if you're doing these things, quota should happen organically every month, because there's a rhythm of doing these things. That's the challenge.
Standard work,
It's, again, back to what you said before about lean, this is standard work. That's a great point.
and everybody checks off. There's a checklist and a visual board that
It's-
shows.
We have a ranking on every one of these. At the end of the week, he and I'll go into the board, and it's 5 minutes. It's literally 5 minutes. And so we know that's not what we're paid to do. We're paid to close business, but this is how we close business. That's the standard work that closes business. Let's do this. Here's the roadmap for high performance. For you as leaders, this is the roadmap for high performance, and this is what I want you to look at. Develop that 1 to 10 behavior scale rating that I had up there before for each of your people. That's a huge point, because management happens across the board, leadership happens across the board and individually. The as-is, to-be model. For everybody on your sales force, I want you to think about this. At today's date, they may be performing their activity at this level, but you have to have a goal by the end of the year for them to be at this level. So someone who's doing lead gen right now at a 4 level, could be by the end of the year, lead gen has to be done at a 6 level. So that as-is gap analysis teaches your people how to grow and what to shoot for. And many times we don't do this, we just say, just keep working harder. Figure out the high, mediocre, and low performance benchmarks. What's happening in your 20-60-20? Who are those high performers that you can nurture? Who are those mediocre performers that you can light a fire under? Who are those low performers who you can help be low performers in somebody else's company? Set and agree on expectations with each of your people. That's a key. Sit down, have a meeting in the 4th quarter. What are the expectations? Let's reach agreement on how we're going to work toward that. Have them adjust their behavior based on their performance. And so, Caitlin, you and I were talking about that before, about performance and how performance can grow. And I think the challenge is more, better, or different is the adjusting of behavior based on performance. Anybody who's falling short may need to do more, may need to do it better, may need to do it dramatically different. But show them that success is in their grasp versus, well, I'm falling short, the year's over, let's wait till next year. Develop skills through training and mentoring. You can develop skills by A, teaching them new things, but then creating partnerships on the team where people who have strengths in one area help people who don't have strengths in the other area. Mentoring doesn't all attach to you. It attaches to the performance of the team in general. And lastly, more, better, and different is applied at a lot of different levels. I want you to think of yourself in this last comment. What are the things that you should be doing more of? What are the things that you as leaders should be doing differently? And what are the things that you should be doing better? You know, we many times just look at our salespeople, but we have to shine this light on ourselves, because if we're spending time as problem solvers, you need to start doing things differently. If you're not incorporating coaching, training, and mentoring to build relationships, you need to think about doing it differently. So, you know, take yourself out of hostage mode, because what we find many times, managers are in hostage mode, where they keep making the donuts at 6 o'clock every morning and don't even look at a better or different way to do it. So for you, the challenge is examine your own behavior. And hopefully this has been a good model for you to take a look at your own behavior and say, I may be part of the problem. I may be part of the problem. So thoughts or questions about this before I bring Rich back up to close us out? Richard, if you will.
Sure. Thank you. So we've thrown a ton of strategies and tactics your way today. So much so that there's no reasonable way that you could ever implement it all within the next 30 days, right? So again, I want to take some of that fear away, some of that discomfort. If you're looking at your notes and you've taken a couple of pages of notes and you're saying, how the heck am I going to implement all this? I want to encourage you not to think that way. I'm going to ask you to choose one thing, and so this is, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to do this. Look through your notes, and I want you to choose what are the key takeaways from today, but more importantly, what's the one commitment that you can make right now that you will apply in your business over the next 30 days? Whether it's a coaching piece or a management piece, or whether it's a sales piece or a process piece, it doesn't matter what it is. I want you to distill everything that you've learned today down to one piece, and that's going to be your commitment over the next 30 days that you make. So take a look at your notes. What's the one commitment that you can make over the next 30 days? And jot that thing down.
So what's your business? I'm in IT. So what do we do? So we develop projects, consulting projects. Very well. Consultants, Microsoft business partners.
So what I've just handed out are some evaluation forms, and so this sheet is an opportunity for you to do a couple of different things. Number one, it's an opportunity for you to remember when you look back on the hour, the 3.5 hours that you invested with us today, 60 days from now, 90 days from now, this sheet will distill what you learned into one easy spot, okay? So as you take a look at this, if you would, jot down your name, today's date, which is the 27th, 9/27, the workshop title, which is the Leadership Challenge, and that one thing that you distilled, that number one lesson learned, that's the top line. The next one is I will start doing. So what are you going to start doing as a result of today's session? What are you going to stop doing? What are you going to cut out of your life as a result of today's session? And what's the action that you chose that you're going to commit to over the next 30 days that's going to impact either your bottom line or your emotional sanity? Maybe both. It's okay. It affects both. So the other big piece that this form accomplishes is you get to evaluate our performance today. And there's two different areas for that, right? The value and the quality of today's session. So at the very bottom, there's a scale of 1 to 5. We ask you to very transparently circle those numbers and those grades. If this was all that you wanted and more, that's going to be on the 4 or 5 scale. If you would have gotten more value out of sitting at home and hitting your thumb with a hammer for 3.5 hours, that would be a 1. Right? So high is 5, low is 1, and anywhere in between. There's another space here, who you know that we can serve. I don't want you to write anybody's name down there, but I want you to write down there, if you know somebody who, like you, is committed to their performance, committed to their professional development, they're a leader, right? So they're a sales leader, they're an executive, they're a CEO, they're a president, they're a business owner, and you think what you heard today would impact them significantly, jot your name down where it says, who do you know that we can serve? And we'll reach out to you to talk to you about that individual. We don't ever just call on folks without ever having spoke to the person that's going to refer us. And so if you know somebody like that, feel free to jot their name down. We'd be honored to reach out to them. If not, it's totally okay. Couple of other programs and events that we've got coming up. Bill mentioned our leadership program that we run here every month. And so actually the next session is Friday. These are our clients that are committed to this program for a year. Just to share with you what that looks like. It's called Strategic Management Solutions. Our attendees are, like you, basically the people in this room. You're either a sales leader, a business owner, a president, or a CEO. And so this Friday, we're going to invest 3 hours on how do we motivate our sales force. And so we're going to dive into motivation and what that really means. So not just using the carrot or the stick, but what does attitude and goal motivation actually look like, and how do we develop that as a fabric of our culture and our organizations to lead our people. And you can see the topics for the rest of the year there. Our Sales Training Foundations class, which is for all salespeople, right? And there's a lot of player coaches in the room, and so that would be appropriate for a number of folks. Next Monday, identifying reasons to do business or pain. We're going to spend 90 minutes on how to develop, identify, find, and get pain on a sales call. Followed by questioning strategies on the 9th, and then covering the prospect's budget and decision-making process. And so that's our sales training program. If it's something that you'd like to chat with us about, feel free to reach out. 2 other pieces that are coming up. We have a boot camp that we're offering on October 10th. I believe that if it's not up there, the pricing for this is fairly low for what we charge. I think it's $495 for one person, $795 for 2 people. It's a full day, and what we're going to do is we're going to take you through those 7 steps that I shared with you earlier this morning, and we're going to extrapolate those upon a full day. And so we're going to give you the strategies and tactics of the Sandler selling system, help you map it over into your world. And so like today, it's going to be a lot of information, more than you can consume. But if you take 2 or 3 nuggets from that session, or your people do, it'll be worth your time. And then the last piece is our Strategic Customer Care Series. And so we run a customer service program a couple of times a year. And so this fall, we're going to run it every Thursday in October. So starting next Thursday, actually, from 8:30 to 8 to 11:30, just like this time period. And this is for folks that are project managers. They're inside salespeople, they're customer service people. They're interfacing your prospects and your clients every single day. But they look at sales kind of like everybody else does. It's swarmy, it's cheesy, I don't like it, I don't want to be a part of sales, but you know as a leader that these folks need to be able to ask questions, they need to be able to find more opportunities, and they need to be able to deal with difficult people without taking that emotional baggage home. And so that's what we help them do over the course of 4 Thursdays in September. And so here's what I'm going to ask you to do. It's one last order of business. On your sheets, if you would, in the top left-hand corner, write down the letter Y and the letter N. You would. Yep, on the review sheets. The evaluations, the little half. So top left-hand corner, write down Y and then N. And so here's what I'm going to ask you to do. If you want to take this conversation further, if what you saw today indicates to you that you want to sit down with us, have a conversation about how we may or may not be able to help you build your sales culture, build up your people, build yourself. If you're getting that sense, then just circle Y for yes. That's what yes means. If you didn't get that sense, if you got everything you came here for, you got your nuggets and you're good to go, you feel like there's really no need for us to chat any further, that's completely okay. And I just want you to circle now. That way we're not going to bother you. So completely up to you, Y or N. Think it over is okay, but we all know think it over means no, so just circle no. It really is okay. So what we'll ask you to do is, this is a 2-part form. If you would, tear it in half. You keep the yellow, and then leave the white sheet on the table, if you would, face down in the middle, and we can collect those after we're done. So you keep the yellow sheet, we keep the white sheet. And the last order of business is fairly simple. We're going to get you out of here in plenty of time. I'd like for everybody to share what was their number 1 takeaway, and what's the number 1 action that they've committed to take in the next 30 days. That way we've got a measure of accountability around here. And you're all sales leaders, right? You're not salespeople necessarily, so we'll expect you to follow through on these kind of things. Good, Devin.
Just the concept of more, better, different, applying those lenses to a lot of different things across our business model.
Yeah.
I think just having that at the front of mind and consciously making that effort will be very beneficial.
Good for you.
You know, taking a look and analyzing every piece of the business, do we need to do more, do we need to do it better? Do we just need to bone up a little bit, or do we need to do something completely outside the box that we haven't even thought of? Awesome, thank you. And what are you committing to?
Weekly meetings to address that with our sort of management team, so we can kind of across the different sectors
Yeah.
look at that and see, you know, can one thing support another? You know, if we're doing this different, how does that affect what you guys are doing over here?
Okay, when does that start?
That'll start third week in October, that's our
Third
next,
week in October?
next one.
Beautiful, well done, next. Thank you.
The main thing I took away is that I really want to change my sales process and that like, I want to get to know the prospect better and their decision-making process.
Good.
Cause sometimes in the follow-up process, I kind of like reach that point where it's like, well, I don't want to stalk them or anything, so.
Yes, business stalking, that's what we call it,
So
yeah.
I want to,
Get arrested for some of the things we do in business.
So I feel like if you
Sales.
have a better idea of like what they go through and they're, you know, get to know them better,
Okay.
like develop that rapport, that'll help me, you know, when bringing back up the conversation again or something.
Yeah, and again, I can be Charlie Charisma all day long, but if the person I'm having a conversation with is all about data and facts, my charisma isn't, it's only gonna do me harm. It's gonna sabotage the relationship and the conversation. I need to be able to step out of that, realize and recognize who I'm dealing with, and be able to put my world into theirs and tailor it to them. So awesome. Thank you. Kate?
You can't rely on personality and intuition alone in terms of the sales process as well as the interview. I think a lot of times you sit across from someone, I like them, I
Yeah,
can see them
you
doing
get the
well
warm
in
and
this,
fuzzies,
instead of
right?
really having that, the correct interview process as well as the process as a sales team.
Yeah.
And then, I'd like to this week actually think of what I can do more of, better, differently, as well as with my team as well.
Okay, so that's your commitment, more, better, different. Good. Michelle?
My number one lesson learned was basically leadership roles and the percentage of time spent in all of those, because I'm spending way too much time in a supervisory capacity, and, way too much time in all of those.
Yeah.
And then my action for this week is really to see what motivates each salesperson on my team and how I can how I can trust them to get to that next level, and how I can motivate them to get to that next level.
Yeah, we hold them to an expectation that
Right.
says, you must understand what the motivation is from your prospect
Right.
in order for you to connect with them and sell to them. If you don't understand that, you're guessing.
Right.
You have to hold yourself to the same standard. We have to understand what motivates and drives them. If we don't
Right.
understand that,
Right.
we're guessing, so.
And that can be your team or your prospect.
Right, right, it translates on both sides of the fence there.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, mine is to determine exactly where all my salespeople are and then set up a 30, 60, 90.
Beautiful.
to,
Never too late.
To review that, and then, that was going to do is to develop the scale to really start from massive to.
Okay, good. So the as is to be modeled, the gap growth. Good. All right, what table do you want to hear from next?
What table are you here for next? Oh, go over here.
All right. Thank you. No offense. No offense over here.
My biggest takeaway was that I'm spending too much time managing rather than leading.
Good.
And then
Good.
one thing I'm gonna implement right away is changing our current weekly metrics, because when I think of them, they don't completely make sense, and I think you guys have the percentages up there, and we spend more time doing the things that are a less percent chance to close,
Yeah.
so.
We should be tracking those things that impact the bottom line, right? We should be and if they're not impacting the bottom line, the question is, why are we tracking them? So
Right.
that's great awareness. Good, thank you. Dimitri?
Yeah, as I thought, I have no sales process and I have no sales team in my organization. So I came here today to sharpen my strategy, I should say, and I found my answers. And I got a confirmation that I'm on the right track, and I probably will be talking to you guys a little bit later when I'm ready to do that. And I found a ton of very valuable information there. Because part of my time I'm selling myself, right?
Of course.
So whatever I call it, but I do sell,
Yeah.
right?
There's no doubt about it.
And even for my little